Yes,
Oh,
Karen
yeah,
does.
you do now.
Do you do them?
Yeah.
Karen? Oh, I thought Denise always had
No,
them.
no. And Karen King.
Karen King
Right.
group, the
Rich
different
Terror.
Karen King
Right.
group.
Karen's got
Terror.
seven.
Okay, folks, we're live on camera. We are
It was easy to
recording.
work with her.
Not
Okay,
anybody.
so
I know
somebody's
that,
been doing himself.
I know that some of you watched earlier the video. We're live. We're on camera now. We're recording. Okay.
We're not
Yeah.
done with it. He's been there.
And if any of you are interested in taking your business to the next level and actually building a team, please see me personally. I'll be glad to coach you in that direction. I did it myself personally with great success. You can do it in any market area, anywhere. It doesn't matter what part of the state you're in or what part of the country, and it can be done. It is extremely profitable, and you also have something to sell at the end of your career, which is pretty powerful as well. So see me personally if you'd like to know more about that, and I'd be glad to help you out. Last week we talked about how to really focus on appointments, right? And how to focus on more appointments that we call bona fide appointments. And we did that to help you increase your odds of getting the listing. Even the best presenter, the best agent in the marketplace does not get 10 out of 10. Sometimes you don't want every listing, am I right? But the techniques that I'm sharing with you and the techniques that I'm going to share with you today will help you get a higher hit ratio. So if you're getting 3 out of 10, well maybe you'll get 6 out of 10 now. You follow me? So last week we worked on increasing your odds. This week we're going to this week is about the process of the listing appointment. So we talked about how to get prospects, how to turn those prospects into appointments. Now you're at the appointment. You just pulled into the driveway. You follow me? You're at the house. And so now we're going to go over the details of the process of what you do when you get there. I also want to warn you that this is a very, very serious class. It's a serious subject. It's a serious topic. We can have fun, but I want you to just be aware of the fact that this is a very serious topic, this process of going through the listing appointment. You're bringing the seller through a psychological process that is really important. And without bringing them through this process, your hit ratio goes where? It goes down, right? And so, we talked about before that some people have a natural ability to sell. Some people have a natural ability to sell. They don't have to go to sales training classes. They just get out there and they hit the street and they just start selling left and right here and there, and everything's working out just well for them. And they just have that natural instinct to be able to go out there and sell. For people like me, ordinary people, I needed to learn a technique. I needed to learn strategies. And so the strategy and the techniques I'm going to share with you today are for ordinary people who would like to have extraordinary results. Raise your hand if you'd like to have extraordinary results. Say, oh yeah, if you'd like to have extraordinary results. Ready?
Oh,
Go.
yeah.
Oh, this is good. Now we're awake. All right, great. Now, so it reminds me of the stuttering Bible salesman. You've heard that story, right? The stuttering Bible salesman. There was a Bible salesman who broke a world's record one week. He came back to his company and his boss said, "How did you sell so many Bibles in such a short period of time?" And he said, "Well, it was easy. I knocked on the door and I said, would you like to buy a Bible, or should I read it to you?" Now that gentleman had a natural born ability to help make him sell more Bibles than anyone else. You follow me? But for us ordinary people, we need to learn a process, okay? But we need to learn a process. Now, you first have to understand what the seller is thinking and what they feel. You need to know what they're thinking and what they're feeling before they'll feel comfortable in signing anything. You follow me? Mm-hmm. That's most important. Certain things have to happen in their mind one step at a time, or they're not going to sign. The problem is, up to this point, you may not have been aware of exactly what those things were. Okay? The newest agent. Who's the newest agent in the room? Who's been here less than 3 months? Jameson? Is it Jameson? How long have you been in business?
3 weeks.
3
Oh,
weeks.
wow.
Now, Jameson has really studies this content material. We had a great conversation after the last session, and he's really taking this seriously. I can absolutely promise you, Jameson, that you could beat out the most experienced agent in this room on a listing appointment if you just follow this process. Because most experienced agents in the business fell into a groove years ago, and they're still doing the same thing over and over again, and it's the wrong thing. So if you just are new and you're doing the right things, you could absolutely compete against a more experienced agent or a top producing agent and be able to get the listing. For you top producers, and for you people that are experienced in the room, learning this process will increase your hit ratio dramatically, okay? Now, you have to know what is in the mind of the seller first, okay? So before we get into that, let's go through our top 5 questions, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what's in the mind of the seller. And I'm going to need to explain to you what should be in your mind too when you get to the listing appointment, because this is what? Psychological process, okay? Number 5, your attitude going on a listing appointment should be A, I'm going over to see if I want the listing. B, I hope I can get this listing. Or C, I wonder what the heck is going to happen on this one. A, that's correct. What thought is in your mind of what thought is in the mind of most sellers before the appointment? A, I can't wait to get this house on the market. Oh boy. B, whatever price they tell me, it's probably going to be okay. Go ahead, laugh at that one.
Yeah.
C, no way am I listing tonight.
C.
C is correct. Number 3, what are the first objectives on a listing appointment? A, build rapport and take control. C, look at the house and hit them with the price. Or C, find out why they are really selling.
A.
The answer is A. You guys are good today.
You confident.
3 for
We're
3.
hot.
You're hot, absolutely. Number 2, should you look at the house first or qualify the seller first? A, look at the house first. B, qualify the seller. Or C, it depends on the situation.
C.
The answer is B. The answer is B.
Question on that.
Yes.
Weren't you supposed to qualify the seller before you
Yeah.
made the appointment back in the, when you're on the phone with him? Seeing if he's a.
You did, and you're going to do it again when you get to the listing appointment, and that I'm going to share with you. Yes, so you're right on both accounts. So you're going to qualify them before you go out on the appointment, and you're going to qualify them again when you sit down with them. And that's going to be part of the process I'm going to share with you, and it's a really important part. And because what will happen is you will get different answers on the phone than you will in person, and that's why you have to go over it twice. You have to go over their motivation and what they want to do in their qualification in terms of their motivation on the phone, and then you're going to go over it again in person because the story will change. Oh, we're just downsizing over the phone. At the house, we're getting a divorce. Different story.
That's downsizing.
Right, absolutely, yeah. We're going to one big house to 2 smaller homes. As one divorced wife mentioned to me one time, she says, I'm trading in my 40-year-old husband for 2 20s. Never talk price until A, you've had a cup of coffee, B, you've seen the house, or C, they are sold on you and your company. Never talk
C.
price until they are C. Sold on who?
You and your company.
And your
Company.
company. Absolutely. You guys are good. Picking this up well. Okay, now, what is in the mind of the seller? And I gave you some notes, and kind of a weird-looking seller there I have in your notes.
Yeah.
Last year's prices.
Okay, in the mind of the seller, okay, and let's say, that's the mind of the seller, okay? That's the seller's mind. All right, in the mind of the seller, the first thing is that they're thinking is they are not going to list. That's the first thing they're thinking. You need to know what they're thinking before you get there. If you know what they're thinking before you get there, you have a huge advantage. Number 2, they have to think good about you. This is what we have to put in the mind of the seller. So they have to think good about you. Now, what do I mean by that? They have to be able to look at you and say, geez, she's friendly. Or, you know, geez, he seems professional. You follow me?
Mhm.
You know, she's a great listener. He really cares about what I'm talking about. You follow me on this? They have to think good about you. They're judging you the minute you get out of your car. When they look out their window and they see your car pull up, is your car clean? What kind of car, you know, it doesn't matter why. I've learned this the hard way because I used to stress over it. They don't really care what kind of car you're driving. So don't go out there and think you have to go out and get a Mercedes or a Cadillac to be successful in real estate. Some of you should do that so that you have the monthly payment that you have to cover every month, and it would motivate you to make more listing calls, okay, more prospecting calls. I'm just kidding, you don't, okay. You don't have to do that. Some of you are looking at me like, really? So they have to think good about you. Number 3, they have to understand that they have a problem. And you have to help them understand that. See, some people have told you, and some of you have talked to me and told me this, that, oh, well, they don't really have to sell. Why are you going out on the appointment? Why are they calling you? Why are they inviting you over the house? I love this. Sellers telling you, and you say buyers are liars, right? Sellers are telling you, oh, we don't really have to sell. Why are you even talking about the subject if they don't have to sell? What you have to do is you have to develop the skill of helping them realize that they have a problem, okay? Some of them truly, honest to goodness, don't believe that they have a problem. They just want to get their house on the market and sell. They think it should sell in 30 days. They think because they have heavy-duty nails and, you know, I-beam construction in their basement that their home will sell faster and for the most amount of money. In fact, $30,000 more than every house on their street. They don't think they have a problem, okay? You have to help them find the problem. So in their mind, they don't have one, and what do you have to help them with? You have to help them with what?
Solving the problem.
Solving, yeah, well, that, absolutely. Solving the problem is the next step. Roberta brought up a great point.
Finding
Prior to
it.
that
You have
is
to recognize the problem.
that they have one. You have to get them to admit. You have to get them to admit that they have a problem, okay? Number 4 is what Roberta said, and that is that you are the person that has the solution. You have the solution, and you have the best solution in the industry. Follow me? And number 5 is you need to ask them for a decision. So number 5 is getting them in their mind that they have to make a decision. And we're going to talk about that in detail in a few minutes, about a decision. A yes or a no or a maybe, right? Maybe's not a decision. I'd rather have a flat out no than a maybe that will never materialize, wouldn't you? Seriously, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you like to walk away knowing, right? That's getting them to make a decision. Now, that's the mind of the seller. Let's look into your mind, okay? The mind of the agent. This is a top producing agent. They have a big head, okay? You have to, number 1, you have to sell yourself. Again, you don't have to write these things down, but think about them, or write them down if you would like to remember some of these things. Is smile, be friendly. Some of you getting on listing appointments and you have this attitude like it's to the left of Attila the Hun. You know, you're angry, you're mad, because the last time you went on a listing appointment, you got the listing, you listed it for 6 months, and they gave it to someone else and it sold in a week, and you're just angry. You have this bad association with going on listing appointments, and you have to get rid of it, all right? If you can't get rid of it and it's stuck in your brain, then just fake it, okay? Fake the smile. Fake being friendly. It's better than being a sincere grouch. You follow me? Okay? Be personable. Remember, now if you have a hard time with this, and not everyone's a natural at this. I mean, we're smiling about it, but you know what the bottom line is? This doesn't come easy to everybody. Okay? For me, it didn't come easy for me because I was so doggone nervous when I would go out there that I'd have a hard time loosening up and smiling and just building rapport. That was a really, really difficult thing for me. Where other people, they were just great at that, but they couldn't follow a system. I was so rigid, I was following the system, but I couldn't build rapport because I couldn't relax enough to build that rapport, and I didn't know what to say to them. You know, so I read some books, I took some Dale Carnegie courses, and I learned, this very powerful statement. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And caring about what people care about is what caring is all about. Say that 3 times fast, right?
Wow.
And I memorized that, right? But isn't that true?
Yes.
Absolutely. So if you want to build rapport, sincerely care about what these people are doing, what they're going through, and how they're doing it. Yes, Bill?
One of the things that I think is wonderful about this age of technology is you have a shortcut to building rapport by learning about what people care about by Googling them. I went on an appointment on Monday. I put in the person's last name and I put in the town and I Googled it. I found out that the daughter was involved in dramatic productions in a local theater group. I found out that the mother was passionate about autism causes. I found out that the father held patents on
Really?
certain devices.
How'd you get all that?
Where she went to high school, where she grew up. I mean, it's all right there on the internet. And
You serious?
Myself.
I've never done
yeah.
What did you do? You put
I
the
put in,
name?
I went to Google and I put in the last name of the family and the town they lived in, and I hit it and just went through what came up, the first 3 or 4 pages that came up. And there's a lot of information, and I'm not saying to go out there and say, you know what I found out about you, because then they're gonna think that you're stalking them. I mean, but you know where their passions are and where their interests are, and it sure helps you to build that rapport a little quicker.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Bill had mentioned that to me earlier. I was very impressed with that, and I was pretty wowed.
That's pretty scary, though.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it's all public information. I mean, he actually found an article that was in the newspaper about this woman's daughter that even the woman didn't know about. And Bill was like a hero. He said, pulled up his laptop and said, "Here, let me show you." I mean, that was pretty impressive. You're leaving behind a good impression. It shows that you care. Yes.
It's me.
Hey, Diane, how are you? How's the weather out there?
It's good.
All right.
Another thing that you can do if you know they have children is go into MySpace and Facebook.
Oh,
And
okay.
look at their children's sites, because some of these parents don't even know their children are out there on the internet,
Right?
quite honestly.
Yeah. Okay, good. Excellent. Yeah. Number two in the agent's mind is,
What did you say, what?
number 2 is to find, you have to find a problem. Find a problem with them. Now, I want to make this easy for you because last week I gave you a list of questions to qualify them. Remember that list of about 7 different questions to qualify them? Who, what, when, where, how, and why, and all these other questions you're going to ask them. And whenever you get stuck for asking questions, I learned this at a seminar I went to, a Brian Tracy seminar, actually. Have anyone ever heard of Brian Tracy? No? Yes? Okay, great. Went to one of his seminars, and he said, whenever you want someone to talk more about what it is that they're talking about, always just say this one phrase. In fact, you could walk away from having a conversation with somebody and only use this phrase and this phrase only, and you would walk away and they would say, wow, Christine is such a great conversationalist, and she only said this one phrase over and over again every time they mentioned something. Are you ready? Here it is. How do you mean? How do you mean? Well, we're not quite sure we want to sell right now. Well, how do you mean? People just go, "Blah!" They just keep talking and talking and talking, and it's just nonstop. It's amazing what will happen. Practice that when you leave the room today, even with with each other. Well, I have a listing. I really want you to show it. Well, how do you mean? It's amazing what people will say after you say that. It's quite funny actually, and it works out pretty well. So try it. It works. It's very powerful. It will help you build rapport as well. Remember, the person also asking the questions is the person who's in control the most. So if you're asking the questions, see, someone is going to control that listing appointment. It's either going to be you or who? Them.
Seller.
Yeah.
If they're hammering you with, have you ever been, been in a situation or you've tried to be in a conversation and someone's just hammering you with questions to the point where you can't even breathe? In fact, they're asking you another question before you finish the last one. And in order to reverse the control of that conversation, you need to get control by doing one thing and one thing only. All you have to do is ask what?
How do you
What do you
mean?
mean?
How do you mean? And or ask, and that's asking a question. And ask more questions. That's another way to do it, is ask more questions. Linda, right? Linda, can you do me a favor and turn that light on right there? I meant to turn it on earlier. Okay, that's perfect, thank you. Okay, now, the mind of the agent. You have to sell yourself, you find the problem. Number 3 is what Roberta mentioned again, which was what? Solve it. Solve the problem. You need to show them that you are going to be able to solve that problem. And guess what? Guess what solves the problem? And guess how you solve the problem? Your listing presentation. Your listing presentation. That solves the problem. If you have a good presentation and it's filled with visuals, that makes all the difference in the world. Those of you in the Longmeadow office, and on the other side of this wall, we put all the flex sheets for your market analysis and your presentation. We have them set up in order, in the order in which you should put them together. From 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and all the sheets are in the order in which you should put them together. Ideally, if I were you, what I would do is I would take those sheets and not bind them for every presentation. I would take those sheets and put them in clear plastic sheet protectors, put them in a 3-ring binder, and then customize the whole, pepper it with your own personal information in between the sheets. Esther was doing a phenomenal job about that yesterday. She was adding pieces in that were applicable to her personally, things that she does that no one else does in the industry, and perhaps no one else does in Carlson GMAC. So if she were
Wow.
going up against another agent, you might not be able to do it.
Oh my God, Esther.
Well, Esther's going to teach the next workshop, by the way. I'll
Right.
tell you what she did. She was taking the ball and running with it. It really made a lot of sense. We talked about home rewards yesterday, and she was using home rewards in her presentation to help get the seller excited about listing with her. Okay, and so that's what I would recommend that you do. Too many people in our company, in my opinion, and I feel very strongly about this, they're putting these CMA kits, they're calling them, or binders together, and we do all the flex sheets, all the sheets that we have about our company and pricing and all this other good stuff. They're binding them, they're putting the CMA in there, and they're leaving them behind for the seller. And I had a great conversation with Jody O'Brien, our expert in-house trainer, and she was saying that in the Foundations for Success class, she coaches people on the fact that you want to take these sheets and show them to your seller one at a time, and if they list with you, you can take the pile of what you just reviewed and give it to them, and when they don't list with you, you take the pile and you put it in your briefcase. And we're probably spending thousands of dollars a year as a company with all these fancy sheets that are being left behind. And the main reason why Jody is teaching everyone to not leave them behind? Because it forces the seller to make a decision. It forces you to remember to help them to make a decision. It's either a yes or a no. Yeses or nos are fine. A yes is good. A no is fine. A maybe, oh, that kills me. I hate maybe. Maybe does nothing for you. It gives you false hope. Okay? And here's another thing. I'm actually going to have an entire workshop in the future, in the next few weeks, on how to handle the I want to think it over objection. Whole workshop just on that alone. Because that is the kiss of death for a lot of salespeople, because most people really think that after you leave the appointment, that the sellers are looking at each other and like this and going, let's think this over. And they're not. They've already made up their mind. They're just too wimpy to tell you what the real objection is. Okay? And so you need to help fish it out of them. And we'll go over that in the future.
Question, when you're putting that information back in your briefcase,
Yes.
they say, you mind if I keep that with your comeback?
First of all, I'll be honest with you, no one's ever asked me that, but they may ask you, you mind if I keep that? And I would say, well, just out of curiosity, why is it that you'd want to keep the information? And the reason why they never asked that to me, because I always put it in a 3-ring binder book with clear plastic sheets.
So it's
And
yours.
it was mine. I'm like, and I would say, well, if anyone ever did ask me that, I would say, well, I need this for my next presentation. Now, I would put in clear plastic sheets with their CMA in it. I would customize it to them, their property brochures, but it didn't look like it belonged to them. It looked like it belonged to me. And part of the problem that most of you are having is that you're going on that DocuBind machine, and you're putting all these perforated holes in the side, and it looks like, here's a beautiful gift I'm giving you. That's not your value. That's not your gift. Your gift is when they hire you and you provide them with a service. Not some fancy looking materials, some leave behind materials. Leave behinds are for average agents. You want to step up to be a pro? Don't ever leave anything behind. And what it will do psychologically actually is it will cause you to think more about getting the seller to make a decision. It's either yes or no. I remember when I was new in the business, I remember this distinctly, that I did a fantastic job doing I got to the point where I was giving a phenomenal presentation. I just felt so good about it. I just felt like, wow. I walked out thinking, you ever get that feeling like, wow, I did a good job? You ever feel that way about anything, right? So you walk and say, wow, I did a great job. And then what I would do is at the end of the presentation, I would say, here's the information that I just went over with you, Roberta. I'm gonna leave this with you. You folks think it over and get back to me and let me know what you'd like to do. Have a great day, and I'd walk out the door. And then I started going to sales training class, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's horrible. What I realized was that those people, after I walked out, probably looked at each other and said, what the heck just happened? Like, does he not want the listing? I mean, we were ready, willing, and able to give it to him, and he walked out telling us to think it over. Because I thought that that's what they would want, that everybody wants to do that, because that's what a few people told me to do, and all I had to do is realize I recognized that that was a stall. Because there were objections that I didn't handle yet. You follow me on this, gang? Right? So, hey, listen, I sold more homes than anyone in my market area in that time frame and even, there's one gentleman who's a friend of mine, he's still saying that no one has been able to beat your record yet, John. They probably have, he probably just doesn't know about it yet. But the bottom line is that, you know what, people used to say, wow, you must be really good. People used to say, I remember, honest to God, distinctly, I gave a presentation to a large group, it was over 50 people, and I was talking about how to handle a commission objection, and one of the women came up from the front, and she said there were 3 women sitting behind me that work in your market area, and I heard some things that they were saying about you. I said, well, go right ahead, I mean, tell me, what was it? And they said, well, they said that you were able to get 7% commissions because you were young. Go ahead, laugh. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
They said, and they also said because you're a guy. I mean, guys, I hate to tell you, you are at a huge disadvantage in this business going up against women on a listing presentation. Women just have a natural ability to have so many more skills just inherently in them that help them to be better at selling than men are. And it's mostly built around that, the ability to build that relationship. You follow me? Do you women and men agree with me on that at all?
Yeah, I think you're
Yes?
in general.
In general, right, in general, absolutely in general. So anyway, so you guys have to work at that a little more, if you're in the general category, of course, right? So anyway,
John?
and I am generalizing, yes,
Just stepping back a minute, going back to taking the listing presentation with you when you leave.
yes.
I've been doing the little binder thing and leaving it behind, and what you're saying to me today makes a lot of sense about putting it in a 3-ring. But what I've really been trying to work through on the last few times I've gone out is, do I wanna do it on the computer itself? Do I wanna have my listing? Then I don't have to worry about leaving it behind or not. But my thought is they want something in their hand to
Yes.
play with, so I don't know which.
Bill brings up the question, should I use my computer for my presentation? And listen, I'm extremely tech savvy, I love technology, love it. I wouldn't, if I were an agent today giving a listing presentation, I would not put it on a PowerPoint and I would not use it in my presentation with the seller. There is a huge advantage of having it in a 3-ring binder, and you know what's kinda neat, if you take the 3-ring binder and you just, slide it toward them a little bit, what will happen is, they'll actually put their hand on the presentation and pull it toward them a little bit and lean in and look at it a little more. And what you should do is you should lay it flat, don't have one of those 3-ring binders that stand up and are on an angle, because you can't see what they're looking at. Yes, Becky? JR, yes.
Quick question.
Sure.
What are your thoughts are, I deal with investors, as you know.
Sure.
And a lot of times I do my CMAs, and I email those CMAs to them.
Yep,
And usually I do this probably about 3 days before I actually sit down with them.
okay,
So when I sit down with my hard copy,
yes,
and I usually, we discuss everything
yeah,
right there, so they kinda already know what's going on, instead of, because you're saying not leaving it.
yes,
So now they may have questions on something,
yep,
and we're taking the paper, so
yeah.
what do you think? Is
I
that
think,
data?
I think the key thing that, what you're saying that's different than what I'm talking about in general, is that the fact that you're dealing with an investor. And for the investor, it's all about the what?
Money.
The numbers.
The numbers, the numbers, absolutely. So the investor is really saying to you, JR, show me the numbers.
Right.
For most people selling their home and listing their property, this is an emotional decision, a huge, emotionally charged decision. And so, I like what you're doing, JR's, actually showing them what the price is before he even sits down with them. But here's what I would caution you on is, in general, but perhaps like, there are always exceptions. I think I said that to one of you the other day. I said, listen, everything I show you, there's always going to be an exception, right? So, in that that's an exception where you might be better off doing it that way, because that's what they need and want first before they'll even sit down and meet with you, okay? So I would say if what you're doing is working, absolutely keep doing it. If you look at your closing ratio and it's not as high as you want, we could sit down and put a plan together, or maybe you could come up with a different strategy. Like for instance, if let's say if your closing ratio was low and you were doing those things, what I might suggest is make sure they're sold on you and your company first before you get to the price. So prior to getting to the price, they might have to go through a PowerPoint presentation that you can email to them. It's a slideshow. It's called a PPS, a PowerPoint slideshow, and I can show any of you how to do that. In fact, I showed the group a while ago. And what you do is you email them, they open up the attachment, and it's a slideshow, and it talks about you and your company, and they have to watch all that stuff first before they get to the price. So it works out pretty well. You might try it that way first. And what I also like about it, it actually serves as a pre-listing packet, which you should all be using as well before you get to the appointment. It saves you time. Not everyone's going to have a chance to look at it before you get there, so when you get there, you'll ask them, did you get a chance to look at the information I sent you before I came in today? Most people say, maybe 50% of them will say, no, I didn't get a chance, and they say, okay, well, let's review that now, and you review it with them, and that's all information about you and your company, okay? A pre-listing packet. It pre-sells you before you get there. It has your photo in there. What they looked at your photo so many times before you got there, when you knock on the door and they open it, they feel like they've already known you before because they've seen your face before.
Can references be in that or not?
Oh, great idea. Roberta said absolutely, references, testimonials, letters, absolutely, it's huge. I think it's a fantastic idea to have those in there. One gentleman, his pre-listing packet, honest to goodness, this was his pre-listing packet. Roberta, you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
On the top page, it said 25 reasons why to hire, 25 reasons to hire Chris to sell your home. And the next page, it said reason number 1, and it was a photocopy of a testimonial letter. Reason number 2, a testimonial letter from another person. Reason number 3, there were 25 testimonial letters and photocopies of thank you cards in there, and those were the 25 reasons why you should hire Chris to sell your home. He went to Kinko's and had them bound on the edge with gum, like a binder, professionally bound, and he had 100 of them made up, and he would use that when he would go on prior to going on his listing appointments, he would mail that out first before he got there. Good idea?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you like it, use it. It'll work for you. Number 4 is ask them to make a decision. And write this down if you want, or keep this deep in your memory, and here's the bottom line. If you leave it up to them, and you don't ask them, they will decide not to decide. You follow me? If you leave it up to them to close you, it ain't gonna happen, right? Now, I'm gonna share with you something else. Go to the next page. Do you all have a next page? What does it say on your next page?
List.
Oh, that's an acronym, LIST. Very good. You know, I want to talk to you about a psychological process, and this is the psychological process. You know, Floyd Wickman, who is the creator of all the things that I'm sharing with you, and is my mentor, and someone I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And if you ever want to take the coins from your purse and invest them into your mind so that your mind puts coins in your purse, I recommend you go on to Floyd Wickman's website and buy something. The number one thing that you should buy are his dialogues. What's it called, Andre? The 101?
Dialogues or something like that?
Yeah, 101 dialogues. You buy that program, because the only thing standing in the way between you and your next commission is what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And Floyd teaches you what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. If you had to buy one thing in real estate, that is the one thing that I would highly recommend that you invest in. Okay? But Floyd invented this and created this many years ago, and it's so simple that it's powerful. And it's powerful because it is so simple. And that is, the trick is to take everything one step at a time. That's the trick. The trick is to what, gang? Take what?
One step at a time.
Absolutely. Take one step at a time. So,
It was 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
yeah, that's right. You're good, Bill. You paid attention. Either way, whether it's forward or back, it's one step at a time, right? Good point. So, there's a psychological process that people have to go through in order for you to get them to make a decision and get them to sign something, right? We talked about that earlier. So, some people call it, have an acronym called AIDA. AIDA. You ever heard that before? Marketing and advertising. It's attention, interest, desire, and action. You follow me? So Floyd didn't invent the psychological process that gets people to buy, but what he was really sharp enough to do, which I really appreciate, is that he created LIST, which is the same psychological process, and ironically enough, it spells what? List. Ready, everyone? Ironically enough, it spells list. You got it. Number L, or letter L, I should say, right? L stands for lead in. Lead in. This is when you sell yourself to these people. You want to show them that you're a caring person. And when you're leading in also, you have 2 objectives. The first one is to show them that you care, right? We talked about that earlier. That's the first step. The second objective is for you to take control. Now there's positive control and negative control. I'm obviously talking about positive control. And like I had mentioned earlier, someone is going to run that listing appointment. And all of you have been on listing appointments before where they were running you. They were asking you questions, and you were like searching through your briefcase and trying to come up in your mind to answer these questions. And before you could get a grasp on what it was that they wanted you to answer, they hit you with another question. And who was in control? They were, absolutely. You know, next time someone hits you with a question upside the head like that and really is trying to throw you off track, you know, just simply use this dialogue. Yes, that is no problem. I'll definitely answer that. You're on page 10. I'm on page 4 right now. We'll definitely get to that during the course of my presentation. And then you get back on what?
Correct.
Back on track. You got it. Now, letter I is investigate. Investigate. You're going to question them. You follow me? To find out their motivation. Then you're also going to investigate the house. That's when you're going to take all your notes. See, you're first going to gather the facts and then find the problem. See, by gathering the facts, sometimes you often find the problem. But first you want to sell yourself. You want to build rapport. You follow me? Then you want to investigate them in the house. Some people do it reverse. They walk in, they start looking at the house right away. They don't take the opportunity to sell themselves or to build rapport. And that's wrong. Follow this process in this exact order. You're gonna walk in the door and they're gonna say, Mark, let me show you the house. And you're gonna say, well, why don't we just do this? Why don't we sit down for a minute? I have some questions I want to ask you. We'll look at the house.
And do you have some coffee?
Absolutely. Do you have some coffee? Because you people are kind of boring. You're gonna keep me awake. Or, my throat gets dry when I talk sometimes. Could you get me some coffee, or do you give me a glass of water? I love that. That's a great technique. And that's being in control. Now, letter S stands for show and sell. Show and sell. After you investigate, you come back to the table and you start showing and selling. What is that called? Your presentation. Absolutely. That's your presentation. Your presentation offers the what? Solution. You got it. Letter T is the tie down.
This is when you get the rope out.
The tie down, folks. Yes, the tie down. How do you know when you get a yes?
Sign.
They sign something, right? That's how you know when you get a yes, right? Here's a rule of thumb. You ready, everyone? Rule of thumb. No Siggy, no money. Okay? Rule of thumb. No Siggy, no money. Now, get a flat out no. That's okay. Just, I'll say it again. I'd rather get a flat out no than to get a maybe that will never materialize. Wouldn't you? Absolutely. Somebody say, no, I'd rather get a yes, John. Okay, well, that's good. Now, what happens, some of you remember what I had mentioned earlier, weeks ago, about my first manager, George? And he said to me, John, if you are on an appointment and the other person doesn't sign something, and it could be a buyer or a seller, he gave me some advice. Do you remember what that advice was?
Don't leave.
You're on an appointment, and they don't sign something. What do? Follow this track.
Like me, my company, or my price was what?
Well, that's the, what do I do to, when they say, I wanna think it over, right? But there's something that you can do. If they don't give you an answer, you don't come to a conclusion where they're signing something, and you didn't get a flat out no.
What can I do to make you sign today?
That's a great one, absolutely, I like that a lot.
Make another
And there you go, that's the key. And if they don't answer that question, you make another appointment. Audrey, can I get a high five? I know high fives are out of style.
You make another appointment to come back
but-
again?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, let me
Why
give
wouldn't
the-
you ask him, how can I remove your objections?
Well, you would do that first, absolutely. And what if you couldn't? Or what if they just kept hitting you with, they just really wanna think it over? Follow me on this. Esther, let's say they say this, listen, you know what, Esther, you gave me a great presentation, but Jameson's coming in at 4 o'clock and I'm really not gonna sign anything with you until I meet with Jameson.
Will you allow me to come back after Jameson comes?
I wouldn't even, I'm gonna make an adjustment to that. Number one, it's great that you asked, what's more important is that you take more control and you tell them, rather than ask them. In other words, I would suggest that instead of saying, is it okay if I come back over, I would say, all right, listen, Jameson's, keep in mind, gang, people are silently begging to be led. They want a leader, they want someone to take charge and control the largest investment of their life. So what you could do is you could say, listen, I know Jameson's coming in at 4 o'clock. Most agents usually take about an hour, and Jameson's planning on a 2-hour listing appointment now, right? And so you say to them, listen, why don't I do this? I don't mind. I'm gonna come back at 5 to go over everything again that we went through, and we can compare it to what Jameson had mentioned, and then that way you'll be able to make a decision that you won't regret. Does that make sense? And then do this with your head. Does that make sense? Great. Now Jameson thinks he's gonna be there for 2 hours, all of a sudden he's there for an hour, and he hears a knock on the door, and there's Esther, saying, okay, I'm here for our appointment, and then they say, okay, Jameson, thanks, I appreciate it, and he's packing up and he has to leave early. Who's got the control? Esther. Who's getting the listing? Esther. So,
Who does Jamison hate for the rest of his
yes.
life?
Listen, you know how You know how I learned this, Jameson? I'm picking it. You know how I learned this? Because I was Jameson one day. It literally, honest to God, happened to me. I was that guy. I was the guy that was at the appointment, thought I was going to be there for 2 hours. The agent that came in before me showed up during the time that I was there. The sellers kicked me out and she got the listing, and I was just like, whoa. How did that happen? Right? And so sometimes the lessons you learn, you were on the receiving end. Do you follow me? Right? So, so I have a lot of empathy for you, Jameson. I really do, because true story. It happened to me. It was actually at a two-family home in Southbridge. Anyone know what Southbridge is?
Yes.
Yeah, it was in Southbridge. It was a two-family on a major road, light blue house. You walk in the front door. The kitchen was right there, and I'll never forget it. I never felt so uncomfortable in my life. I was like, wow, it just blew my mind. Yes, Lauren.
What was the retort that you gave us in the same situation, but then we say something to something like, well, I know Jameson is coming, but something like, if you sign with me now, I'll call Jameson. And
Yes.
And
Yes.
when is that
Well,
to
that-
be used? I'm just.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another counter there. By the way, gang,
Poor Jameson.
but you're going to learn a lot today. You're going to learn a lot.
I'm getting awful red.
Getting scared.
People just like saying your name, I think. It has a nice ring to it. So Lauren had asked the question. She said, by the way, there are several ways to handle one situation. So let's say if I were Esther and they said to me, well, we're going to interview Jameson at 4 o'clock. We're going to meet with him. And another thing that you could say, rather than make an appointment to come back, to try to close. And by the way, Lauren, if this technique doesn't work, then you could obviously make the appointment to come back. And the technique that Lauren is referring to is this. Oh, Jameson, doesn't he work over at Century 21? Yeah, okay, or ABC Realty or XYZ. Yeah, he works at, listen, I happen to know who he is, and I know he's a great agent. Why don't we do this? I don't mind. Why don't I take the listing, and I will split my fee with him should he bring a buyer to your property. So he will absolutely, and because I know that you know him, and because I know he already did some work, here's what I'll do. I don't mind. Hear me on this. After I get it into the multiple listing service, I will call him immediately. That is my promise to you. And give him the first option to let him know that your home is available. And he can bring in any buyers he wants into the property. And here's the best part, because now the seller says, oh, I don't know, I'm gonna feel bad. I said, listen, I don't mind. I'll call him after I leave today and let him know that you're canceling the appointment and that I twisted your arm and got the listing, and that, he doesn't have to, waste his time coming all the way out here. And, I'm sure he'd appreciate the courtesy call. I'll make the call for you so you don't have to deal with that. Is that okay?
You would be on my blacklist.
I had 2 of those calls last year
Yes?
from one agent on my street.
Who was it?
Sold on my street on Dennis, you know who it was, from Coldwell Banker.
Yep.
And I thought, she's on my blacklist, because I thought, what a rude thing to call me and tell me that she received the listing, and that
Well,
the
what's the
homeowner
initial?
will think you're a wonderful person, but blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
And
she
she
was
did
kind
it
of-
twice to me.
What's the initial?
Giving you a little dig, right? Okay. So now, we got lead in, investigate, show and sell, and tie down. The tie down is to get a decision, or so what are your options when you go to tie down? You can get a what?
Yes?
You can get a,
No?
or you can get a what?
Maybe. No?
Maybe.
Another appointment?
Paula Carlson, got it. You get another appointment. Let's do this again, you ready? You can get a what?
Yes? No?
Or
Another appointment.
Or another appointment, you got it, absolutely. Okay, let's go to part 2. This is so exciting. We're on part 2. What is the best way to stay in control on a listing appointment?
B.
A, B, or C? Ask the seller if it's okay. Take things one step at a time and stay on track, or it's not even possible to stay in control. John, what are you, crazy?
B.
The answer is B. What do you do if the seller says, we're not listing tonight?
No problem.
No
Absolutely.
problem.
C, Bill's got it. Say, no problem, and get back on what?
I can
Back on
stay,
track. Number 3, what is the most important qualifying question for you to ask? A, how much do you want for the house? B, who else are you talking to about the sale? Or C,
C.
what would it take for you to list with me today? Right. Paula, that's your line.
My favorite.
That's your favorite, yeah, what would it take? Number 2, when you look around the house with the sellers, use a lot of A, empathy, B, showmanship, or C, dialogue.
Dialogue.
The
B,
answer is
showmanship.
showmanship, and I'm going
B.
to talk about that a little more later as well.
Dialogue.
I always throw a little curve at you every time we put these
How
5
about
questions
empathy?
together.
Oh my God.
Number 1, the easiest way to get more listings is to dazzle them with dialogue, just go on more appointments, or C, lose fewer.
C.
C, lose fewer. The way to get more listings is to lose fewer. In other words, at some point in your career, you're going to go out on 10 listing appointments. The fewer that you lose, the more you gain, right? See, my goal is to, I've already shown you how to go out and get more listing appointments, but now I'm teaching you how to lose fewer of the ones that you want, right? Some of them you want to lose, right?
Yes, correct.
Now, let's go to,
Not that I'm bitter.
yeah, right. I'm bitter.
Huh?
Let's go to the next page. And I don't know what you have on your page, but I have some kind of a technique on my page. What kind of technique do you have on your page?
Seriously powerful.
Thank you, Ken. A seriously powerful technique. Not just a powerful technique, but a seriously powerful technique. Now, I put this in the form of pictures. Does anyone ever remember the game show Concentration? Remember that show? Wasn't that a great show? They should bring that back, don't you think?
Yes.
And they had pictures, and the pictures were what? Words, puzzles, part of the phrase, right? It helped jog your memory, you could say things. So, what I did is I figured I would put some words, some pictures together for you, because a picture's worth 1,000 what?
Words.
No, dollars.
Dollars.
Right? Picture's worth $1,000. So, again, we talked about increasing your hit ratio. Before I get into the pictures, I want to mention a few things. The trick is to increase your odds. There is a precise time to do the same thing at the same time on every listing appointment. And by the way, everyone does the same thing at the same time on every listing appointment. It's just that some of us have been doing it wrong forever. Okay? And some of us have learned to do it the right way. All right, gang? Now, we're going to follow the LIST, the list. LIST. All right? And the first step is you're going to do this. You're going to ring the bell. Okay?
Sorry.
Is that a bell?
That's a doorbell.
That was a light switch.
Oh, really? No, that's a doorbell. Yeah, that's a doorbell. So the first step
I was thinking
is ring the doorbell. The second step is to what?
Smile.
And the third step is to,
Pay them off.
yes. Bill said pay them off. Actually, Bill, I got real excited. You were right on track. It's pay them a compliment. Okay? Pay them a compliment.
That's number 3?
Number 3 is pay them a compliment.
She's shopping. I don't get it. I don't get
Yeah,
Well,
that
she's
doesn't.
paying,
Oh, she's
and
paying.
just like the first of the
She's
3.
paying.
Just to get your brain going, girl.
it. Look professional.
Well, that too, absolutely, absolutely, right. Actually, her skirt's a little short on that. I wouldn't recommend that for on a listing appointment. On that picture.
Yeah, right.
So, all right, gang, if I could have your attention, look up here for a second. Step number 1 is,
Ring the
Ring the
bell.
bell.
step number 2,
Smile.
step number 3 is,
Pay the compliment.
and at this point, a seller who went to seller training school says to you, Michelle, I just want you to know, I'm not listing my house with you tonight.
No problem.
No
And the pro
problem.
says, and Audrey says,
No problem.
No problem.
problem.
That's what you
and then
think.
she gets back on
Track.
Track.
and on the track for the next item is number 4. And number 4 is to
Go in and
take
sit
them
down.
to the kitchen table, right? Take them to the kitchen table. You know, going back to number 1 is what?
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
Number 2 is,
Smile.
now I've heard some people say to me, John, that's just not me. You know, I'm just not.
Can't ring the bell?
Yeah, I just can't smile. You know? Hey, listen, going back to number one, and then I'll get back to what I'm saying, because Laura brings up a good point. I, honest to God, gave this class before, and truly, honest to God, true story, one of the agents said, what if they don't have a doorbell?
Oh my God, right away.
Go to the next house.
At that point, I packed up my presentation and I left the room. So, that's a true story. So number two is what? And then this gentleman did say to me, he said, John, you know, it's just not me. And I said, listen, fake it till you make it. A phony smile is better than a sincere grouch.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, and you know what Tony Robbins teaches about physiology? He said, actually, I want all of you to try this with me for a minute. Everyone put your hands down by your side for a minute. Put your shoulders back like this. As far back as you can, right? And then smile as wide as you can. Don't worry, no one's looking at you. They're all looking this way. As big as you can. All right. Now ready? Now feel depressed. Can you do it?
No.
Feel depressed. You can't do it, right? So the point is somewhat of an exaggerated example. Not the times that you're feeling bad or feeling depressed or not feeling good, change your physiology and it will change the way you think, because your body's telling your brain a different message and you will actually start feeling better.
I'm trying to do that
Yes,
before I
all
make phone calls.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great
I
idea.
try to smile, even though I have something horrible to say. Or we're much often Kiev in office to give people bad news.
Raise your eyebrows.
Raise your eyebrows?
Try to frown.
Wow, that's impossible. That's a good one. That's harder than the tap your head, rub your belly routine.
Yeah.
So raise your eyebrows and try to frown. That's a good one. That's a good one. Try that, gang, if you can. It's good. Excellent, excellent. I love that. That's a good one. Thank you. I think I learned a new one.
What's the picture of the next one?
Okay, now, the reason why I'm repeating this over and over again is because I want you to walk out of here today, literally, and I want you to have memorized the process, okay? So, it sounds like you guys are having fun with this too. So number one is what?
Ring the bells, smile, pay them a compliment, take them to the kitchen.
Take the kids' table, right?
What's 5?
Number 5. Did you say Gumby? Yeah. Number 5 is, you ready? Break the ice. Number 5 is break
Is that an ice pick? Ignore the crack in the floor.
That's Gumby standing over a crack in the ice. That's what that's a picture of, right?
Yeah, looks like
You have a great visual mind, Mom. It's great. I like to tap into that sometimes. Find out what's really going on in there. You
Gumby's
know?
always green.
Remember earlier we talked about what's in the mind of the seller and what's in the mind of the realtor. There's a third thing is what's in the mind of Lauren. So number 5 is to break the ice. Number 6 is to take them out on a safe island. Take them out on a safe island. And that's a psychologist term is for you're going to tell them what's going to happen before it happens. Dentists and doctors do this all the time. They take you out on a safe island all the time. The last time you had a filling, Becky, they said, you're going to feel a little pinch. Your head's going to vibrate like this when we start drilling, right? And your face is going to be a little numb after when we're done, and it's going to feel a little puffy. You're going to drool, you know. So they tell you what's going to happen before it happens. They're trained to do this. So are professional real estate agents trained to do this. Okay? Remember, there's a specific process that you use every time, all the time, on every presentation. All of you are using a process right now, but not all of you are using this process. You follow me? Okay? So let's do it again. You ready? Look up here for a second. Bring the
doorbell.
Smile. Compliment. Break the ice. Take them to a safe island.
This is me, bro. Okay, great.
Tell me some more about this.
You guys are having more fun in the hall than we are.
I know.
We want to know what's going on. We want to be at the fun table. You know?
We need to knock down this wall.
Right. We can do that.
I need to knock down the wall.
How many listings appointments?
Yeah, we get one of your investors to take this wall down. Get a contractor in here to do it. All right, Mark just had an awesome question, and Mark's question was, tell me some more about this safe island, and I'm so glad you asked that question, Mark, because just for you, I filled out the entire next page. Right?
Safe Island Island.
Now, before we get to the Safe Island dialogue, I want to touch a little bit about why we have the process the way it is. Would you folks mind doing me a small favor and just turn back to the page with the pictures on it? Because I want to clarify a few things. I want to really drive a few things home on that page. You know, pay them a sincere compliment and be sincere about it. For instance, you could say things like, "Wow, Roberta, I love your landscaping out in front of your house. Did you have that professionally done, or did you do it yourself? Was it done by a professional, or did you do it yourself?"
Is it compliment on the house?
On the landscaping.
I mean, is it better to landscape, to compliment the house or the person?
Well, you could do this. Let's say, now Roberta brings up a great point. Because this really happens. Roberta's been to homes where, and we all have, where there's nothing to compliment them on the house, right? So you can literally say something like this: "Mrs. Jones, I just want you to know that I made a lot of calls last Thursday in the morning, and you were one of the nicest people I talked to. I just want to know I really appreciate that." Okay? You could walk in the house and you could say, "Wow, these hardwood floors look beautiful. Did you finish them yourself? Or did you have a professional do these, or did you finish them yourself? Wow, the painting and the stenciling in this room is really intricate and detailed. Did you have a professional do that, or did you do that yourself?"
And then tell them to get rid of it.
Here's another one. You ready?
Yeah.
Wow.
They should be telling them to get rid of it now.
Wow, your kids are beautiful.
Did you
was
do
this
that
done by a
yourself?
professional? So watch what you say when you say this stuff.
Right?
Yes. And remember, at any time, yes, JR.
In regards to that, like the paying of the compliments, usually what I try to do, especially if it's like a single, just a couple selling their home.
Yes.
I try to look around and try to personalize. Like if I see kids' pictures, I have kids, you have kids.
Yes.
Or if they, they ski or things of that nature. Usually I try to personalize it. Like, I didn't know you skied, and I skied. Have you gone to Okemo?
Right.
And then once you start that dialogue, they sort of, it's not as professional anymore. It's almost like a friendship.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the part where I was just going to cover, which is breaking the ice. And talk about anything other than real estate. So when you get to the break the ice part, talk about something other than real estate, and you're building rapport, right? How many people remember that commercial years ago? Baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet, Jameson. All right, you get the bonus. Way to go. All right. If I didn't think I'd knock Linda over, I'd give you a high five, but it'd probably fall over the chair. But that's great. Baseball, apple pie, Chevrolet.
There was a third thing before Chevrolet.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Hot dogs.
Hot dogs, apple pie, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
Chevrolet. Carlson, you get the bonus. Way to go.
I knew something was wrong with that saying.
Here I was,
Paula, you're good. You're very good. I want you on my trivia team.
Okay.
Play trivia. Someday we're going to have a trivia game. I'm already picking out the people I want on my team for trivia. All right, so take them to the kitchen table. Let's talk about the fourth item for a minute. Why the kitchen table?
Because you can look at each other.
You can see each other better, absolutely. Why else?
It's a
Where
comfort.
everybody talks. Everybody talks.
Comfortable, you know.
Everyone talks at the kitchen table.
Yep.
It's a family place. What else?
It's a
You can lay
comfort
out your
place.
It's a comfort place. You can lay out your presentation.
You can have coffee.
You can have coffee. It's not as formal. There's better lighting, right?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, friends go to the kitchen. Strangers are invited to the living room, right? One time I tried giving a presentation in the living room. I sat in a chair and I sunk in this chair. And the cellars were literally, 6 feet away this way and 8 feet away that way. And the man chair, in the living room. And I've got my listing presentation and I'm sitting like this. And I've got my book open and I'm trying to let them see it and they couldn't see it. It was ridiculous.
Did they have a kitchen table?
They did, but they wanted to sit in the living room. That was where they wanted to go. So what did I have to do? I had to take control, and I had just simply had to say, listen, I'd love to sit out here, it's so comfortable out here, but I have this information I'd like to share with you, and I think it would be more comfortable for the three of us and easier for me to show you what I need to show you if we could just go to a table somewhere, like, I don't know, maybe the kitchen, right? Please, you're killing me here, all right?
Or the dining room table, I think it's good, because
Yeah.
it's never cluttered, otherwise the kitchen, oh, there's so many things on it.
Yep, I would still recommend the kitchen though.
Yeah?
Better lighting,
absolutely.
Mark.
Yep.
Okay, now that's your guy.
Hey, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever had a party at your house? Raise your hand. Where does everybody always end up?
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen. Isn't it bizarre? I don't care how small the kitchen is, people end up in the kitchen for some reason, right? So that's where you want to end up. You want to end up in the kitchen. Now, the last step is to take them out on a safe island. And I've actually given you the dialogue on how to take them out onto a safe island. And here's how it goes. If you would, for just one moment, entertain me by listening to me. I'm going to read this to you. Before I begin, let me explain how I work. I'm not interested in taking a listing just for the sake of taking a listing. One of the things that I learned in real estate school when I started in this business 3 weeks ago or 30 years ago, whatever is the length of time you've been in this business, or if you don't want to give that away for some reason because it's too short of a time that you've been in the business, you could say one of the things I learned in real estate school is that if you take a listing for the sake of taking a listing, it often leads to letting you down. And I don't think that's what you want, is it? Right? And then you do this with your head. Look at me. I don't think that's what you want, is it? Right? So to prevent that from happening, there's a simple process I like to follow. May I share it with you now? And then you do this with your head. May I share it with you now? Okay, great. The first part of the process is I'm going to ask you a series of questions.
Your head's gonna hurt. That's
Yeah,
the end
yeah,
of it.
whoa, right.
Smile.
I'm going to make myself dizzy. Ask you a series of questions. And you're going to ask them a series of open yes-no questions, is what Floyd likes to call them. Open questions. They're open questions that begin with a W, except for how. That ends in a W, okay? So it's who, what, when, where, how, why, and, and you're having a conversation with them about it, okay? And I've given you a list of questions last week also in the previous session. That there were some questions that get the ball rolling. And then I would say to the seller, Mr. Marcel, then I'm going to ask you to show me around your home. And when they show you around the house, you're going to use a lot of showmanship. Remember we talked about that earlier in the 5 questions. You're going to use a lot of showmanship when you look around the house. So what you're going to do is, like, if you walk into something and you kick it and it almost falls over, and the seller says, geez, you think I should move that? You say, I would, right? Remember the dialogues, the first session we had? I would. Yeah, I would definitely get that out of the way. Somebody could trip and fall on that, and that wouldn't be good, right? A lot of showmanship. Let's say you look up and you see a stain in the ceiling, and you kind of go like this, you go. What do you think the seller's going to say to you?
Should I do something?
Get rid of
Well,
that.
Roberta said, I'm going to take care of that. I would. And Bill says, should I do something about that? I would.
I would.
Yeah, definitely. So use a lot of showmanship. You're walking across the floor, and as you're walking, you hear,
Well, don't walk there.
oh, okay, sorry, yeah. Mark says, walk on the other
Put a
side.
plant there.
And so they'll say, gee, should I fix that? Should I take care of it? Yeah, I would take care of that. So use a lot of showmanship when you're walking around the house, okay? And you can also find more places to give more sincere compliments. There are 2 rules of thought, that different people have. Sometimes they tell you to go around the house and just say, oh, and this drives me crazy, I gotta tell you, and sometimes at some point it sounds really insincere if you're complimenting them too much. It just feels like you're kissing up to them too much, and at some point they're gonna catch wind of that and they're not going to feel comfortable with you. They're gonna feel like you're just saying that to try to get them to like you rather than being sincere. So don't compliment everything and don't compliment it too much. Be sincere about your compliments. But also, you know, be generous too. I mean, absolutely, if you see something looks great, be sincere about your compliments. On the other hand, what some agents do, and this is really bad, is they'll go in and they try to knock things down in the house too much. And they say, oh, I looked at your third bedroom here, that's a really small bedroom. Geez, this is gonna be a tough house to sell with this bedroom being so small. You know, I don't know what you're expecting to do with that. You know, I looked outside, you know, geez, that garden looks like it's horrible out there. You know, just, you really need to spruce it up. So try to use some tact, you know, when you're saying, you know, one of the Dale Carnegie things is to compliment in public, but criticize in private, right? So, you know, you don't wanna beat them up too bad, but at the same time, there are some, you might look at their entire home and say, listen, after I take the listing, we're gonna go over some ideas, I think, that will help you get more money for the home in terms of getting certain things done around the property. And that's all you have to say, and then go through those suggestions, okay? Help, you know, merchandising their home for sale. Number 3, thank you. When you go back to the table, after you use a lot of showmanship and you ask a lot of questions and a lot of should I questions as well, going back to number 2, ask a lot of should I questions when you're walking around the property. Can anyone give me an example of a should I question? Should I
include your kitchen appliances in the listing?
Yes. Becky, should I include the curtains? Should we include the shades?
I would.
Should I disclose that there's mold on every wall in the room? I would. Christine's like, what house have you been in? Get out of there, hurry up, quick, don't breathe. Okay, so ask a lot of should I questions. So number 3, go back to the table, show, that's when you show you, all right, I'm sorry, I was thinking of too many things in my mind at the same time. I'm in the dialogue with the seller right now. And so what I'm gonna say is, okay, we're gonna go back to the table, and then after you show me around your house, and then I'm gonna show you why so many people choose me and my company to do business with. Okay? Then after I share that with you, I'm gonna talk about price in terms, and I'm also gonna share with you what you're going to net in your pocket after the sale of the property. See, I'm telling them the order and what way we're gonna do things. I'm gonna ask you a series of questions, and by the way, like Bill mentioned earlier, you know, you've already asked them a series of questions when you were on the phone with them. You're gonna ask them go over those same questions again with them at the house. Have your answers there, you know, but then ask them to answer them again for you and restate them. And you know, when I was on the phone with you, Bill, you mentioned that you needed to, that you were thinking about downsizing. When you say downsizing, how do you mean? That's a powerful question, gang. That really gets them talking about more things. And what should you do when they keep talking? Do what? Keep taking notes. Even if you have a phenomenal memory, I'm encouraging you to make really good notes because it shows that they're listening. Sometimes when I'm coaching people and I'm talking to them about, you know, advancing the career, I always know when they're serious if they're taking notes or if they're taking action or they're going the next step. You know, if it shows it, you know, or like, hey, can you print that out for me, John, or something like that. I know that that you're going in the right direction. So it just shows that you care, you know, and it shows that you're going to do something about it. Back to the table, show you how so many people choose me. We're going to talk about price, terms, and net, and then after we talk about those things, assuming we're in agreement and we can make a decision, at that point we can make a decision as to whether we should work together or not. And that's the part where you close for the signature, okay? Now, going through this list again, the LIST, if you would, when we go to the previous page where it says serious, powerful techniques, when I went through LIST with you, the lead-in is when you ring the bell, smile, pay them a sincere compliment, okay? And then the investigate part is when you get to the fourth one is when you take them to the kitchen table. That's investigate. You break the ice, you're still investigating. You take them out on a safe island, you're still investigating, you're sharing with them. When you get to the third part, when I take you back to and I show you why so many people choose me and my company, that's when you're hitting the S, the show and sell, okay? And then you show and sell, then you talk about the price, the terms, and the net, right? At that point, then you go to the T, the tie down, which is the fifth step, which is assuming we're in agreement, then we can make a decision whether or not we should work together. And that's when you close for the signature. And then you simply say to them, this is the process for working, and that prevents us from making a mistake that we might regret. Does that make sense to you? Right? Now, what I'm going to do in terms of every time that we have a workshop, we always have an interaction session, okay? So what we're going to do is going to have a very quick, fast interaction session. And what I would like you to do is pick a partner right now and look at the person next to you and say, you're my partner. Ready? Go. All right? Now, all right. Actually, you two can be partners right here if you want. We need to change partners so everyone can have a partner. Raise your hand if you don't have a partner. You don't have a partner. Audrey doesn't have a partner, right?
Who doesn't
So,
have a partner?
I'm sorry.
Partner.
You do?
I'm a partner.
I'm sorry. Diane, I apologize. I'm sorry. Does everyone have a partner?
Yes.
Audrey doesn't have a partner. Does everyone have a partner out there? They do? Or are they just saying that because they're out in the hall? Okay. Audrey, you're my partner. Okay, here's what I want you to do. The person that is the tallest, raise your hand.
The two of us?
Yes.
You tell us.
Okay. All right, now here's what you do. The person who's not the tallest, you're the person that starts it, okay? And here's what we're going to do. Very simple, very quick, very easy. Now I want you to follow my detailed instructions on this, okay? I don't want you to role play this. Here's what I would love for you to do. I want you to physically read this out loud as fast as you humanly possibly can. And the reason for doing that is it will help you remember it, okay?
Safe Island Dialogue?
The Safe Island Dialogue, okay? Any questions? No? Okay, now when you're done, immediately when you're done, your partner will read it back to you.
Okay.
When you're both done, try if you possibly can to not talk, and that way I know that everyone's done, and then we can move on to the next step real quick. You ready? So, ready, set, go.
Yes. Before I begin, let me just get out of here. That is just take a listen to say take a listen. I go to really high school and I'm going to but I'm going to lay your life down. I don't think you know what you like. So remember, after there's a process I like that. I'm sure that with you now.
Seems to do this before, but my friends trying to buy the first 3 hours break. And then we take the mother-in-law from the store
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, great job, gang. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Hey, you know what? You role played today a little bit. That was pretty good. And you know what? Most importantly is you put something in your mind that wasn't in your mind before you came in here today. So hopefully you walk out of this room different real estate agents than the way you walked into this room. Now, here's what I wanna leave you with. If you use this process, gang, your hit ratio will absolutely soar. And if you would, just entertain me one more time before you leave. And follow with me on this. You ready, everybody? Look up there, ready?
Smile. Smile. Pay him a compliment. Take it.
Great guys.
Say bye.
All right, great job today, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Leave the clipboards.
Yeah, leave your clipboards.
You too? I didn't work on it. I got the other job. Well, who left it?
Oh, I got it. I didn't even know I was just take this out.
Yeah.
I got a bed. I worked at that hospital.
No, we got them at the office.
I had no
Want to be office?
I thought I just had to
You wanna get together for lunch after the inspection?
Jack
at 1:30.
Right.
And I'd be driving back and forth.
I gotta go. I've seen your name.
Right.
We don't get together like we used to as a company.
No.
We go ambulance and like we have meetings all the time, all together.
I'll check it for you, Diane.
We talk on the phone a lot to people.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Right.
You don't go to
What I would say
closings
is that
together,
I,
you know, it's just a weird thing.
It's different.
Yeah.
Totally different
Yeah.
today.
when
And I think
Emails
that,
and phone
yeah,
Number
I
one,
think that's the technology.
Yeah, it is. Make things quick and easy and, you know, we
Yeah.
just don't come
And
face
so
to
what I'd
face.
like to do is ask you this,
Really is
is it,
amazing.
my
Yeah.
company
He'll
that you
do
wanna
it
think over
because
to you, and
he's
feel
young
comfortable
He's
that my
staying
company
and
is,
absorb
it
all
has all the
the
resources to
input
have
that
a
he
good
can
product,
have.
so,
And she's
okay.
mentoring him too.
Yeah, oh,
Is
that's
it,
super, she's excellent.
Is it the price? How do you feel about the price of the home? Is that
Well,
what
Jack,
you
nice
wanna think
meeting you.
about?
My
You wanna-
pleasure.
you
Take
wanna
care.
think of- So it's the real thing that you wanna think
Okay.
about is the pricing. If they said, no, it's not the pricing, then I would say, well, the third and last thing usually that typically is it me? Are you comfortable in the fact that I'm gonna do everything that I said I was gonna do? And sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not comfortable with it, you know, because we've been burnt by a lot of realtors who really wanna think it over. You say, okay, no problem, why don't you do this, I don't mind, and I pull out of my listing presentation, my service guarantee. And I would add something to the Carlson GMAC service guarantee, and I would put together your 30-day guarantee. And your 30-day guarantee simply states that, if I, don't do everything I said I was going to do in my written marketing plan, and here's a copy of my written marketing plan, I'm gonna sign this right now for you. You can fire me at the end of 30 days and cancel the contract agreement and go list with another agent, go for sale by owner, go anything you want, and you have the ability to do that. Now, how do you feel? Is any of my competitors doing that? I mean, because sometimes you promise you're gonna do so many things for them that they don't, they're like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. And they wanna know that you're going to do it in a short period of time, not an extended period. So that's the way to potentially handle that objection. If they say they wanna think about it over the price, and say, okay, what is it about the price that you wanna think over? Or when they say, you know, it is the price, and I'll say, well, how do you mean? Well, John, we need to net a certain amount of money to buy our next home, and we need to get more money for the property. And then I might say to them, well, what if you can't get the money that you want for your property? Rather than trying to convince them that it's worth what it's worth, I ask them a question. What if you can't get that amount of money? What will you do? Well, we'll probably stay here. Well, see, aren't you glad we talked about it? You probably should stay here. Shake hands and walk out. You're gone. Or they may say, we want to get that amount of money. And they might say to you, well, if you couldn't get that amount of money, what would you do? And they said, well, we'd still have to sell. So, well, your choice is to either, you have a choice to make, and which one is bigger? Is it your need for selling or your need for money? Which is greater? And they just look at you and they go, wow. And what you're doing is you're helping them to think it over. You're helping them come up with a process that they can work with. And so now what you do is you would actually say to them, okay, well, if they say to you, well, we need to move. Ultimately, well, then you need to adjust the price, but we need the money. Well, then you can't move. If you need this much money, you're not going to be able to move. So which one is it? Well, we need to move. Well, then you can't have the money. Well, we need the money. Well, then you can't move. You know what I mean? So you need to decide which is more important. And regardless of what I've done, is I've helped them make a decision. I've left feeling, knowing that I know where they're at and where
Yeah.
they're going, so.
All right, so you take that into the next appointment,
Yeah.
the next day.
And if they say it's my company, or they may come up with a fourth thing that you don't even know about. They may say, listen, you mentioned something in your presentation, we don't want a sign in our front yard.
Yeah.
And we have a real problem with that. And then you could say to them, well, if I didn't have a sign in the yard, would you be happy with everything else? And they said, sure. I said, okay, so I could have the listing as long as I don't put a sign in the yard? Yeah. As long as I make sure that you understand the significance of the reasons why you would or wouldn't have a sign in the yard, and you have a conversation about that, and you encourage them to put the sign in the yard. What it does is it flushes out the real reason. What are you thinking over for 24 hours that is causing you to really do this? It might be, like we mentioned earlier, I want to interview other agents.
Yeah.
And so there are a whole series of ways of handling those objections. And we're gonna talk about handling objections later on, as well as specific handling of specific objections. But before you can handle an objection, you need to know what it is. What is it that they're really thinking over?
Yeah.
Floyd tells a funny story, and he says, I don't recommend that anybody actually try this. He said, I'm just telling you this as a joke. He said, but he said that he did this once, but some people said to him, listen, we don't ever make a decision unless, we pray on it overnight. So we want to take some time to pray on it, and before we decide to hire you. And he turned and looked at them and said, who do you think sent me here? So anyway, that's just.
I've prayed with clients before.
Yeah.
They've asked me to pray with them on that,
Yeah,
and I'm
that's
so
pretty
not
nice,
religious.
Okay.
I read hands and I say, just don't smile, just don't laugh, just
Yeah,
don't,
right.
just stay serious.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's, and the agent that probably got flustered and freaked out and ran out of the room, they probably didn't hire that agent,
No, they hired me, but it didn't sell, so it was overpriced.
It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be.
Well, Christine and I ran into a situation yesterday, and you probably know the gentleman, Jim something, what's his last name, a salesman for American Heritage magazine.
It's a magazine that he's selling
yes,
to,
yes,
like
yes.
that.
Yeah, and that
Yes,
you,
yes. Hold on one second, I'll just shut the video off. So you've
Been on video the whole time.
Oh, that's great.
Star of the day.